Hey, welcome to 1821 Bible Talk. Today we'll be talking about the book of James, James chapter 1, verse 1 through 18. I guess I'll read it. It says, James, a servant of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ, to the 12 tribes scattered among the nations. Greetings. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. But when you ask, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Such a person is double-minded and unstable in all they do. Believers in humble circumstances ought to take pride in their high position, but the rich should take pride in their humiliation, since they will pass away like a wild flower. For the sun rises with scorching heat and withers the plant. Its blossoms fall, and its beauty is destroyed. In the same way, the rich will fade away, even while they go about their business. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. When tempted, no one should say, God is tempting me. For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. But each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desires and enticed. Then, after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death. Don't be deceived, my dear brothers and sisters. Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of the heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. He chose to give us birth through the word of truth, that we might be a kind of first fruits of all he created. Okay. So how does faith, so in the beginning, it talked about faith leading to or producing perseverance. So how does faith lead to or produce perseverance?
I think that when you think of someone like persevering, you think of someone like overcoming something, right? So I think faith is a subset of that, or like it's like a main ingredient of that formula. Mm-hmm. And I think the only way you can really persevere is having consistent faith throughout that journey. So like let's say someone gets into a bad car accident and they have to learn how to walk again. The only way they can get to that point of walking again is being consistent in their physical therapy or their exercises. So to, make that as an analogy of faith with perseverance, I think you have to really be consistent in that, because how else do you expect to overcome what you're going through?
So I think like the consistent part, so like me getting up, going to rehab every day, mm-hmm. I would only do that if I believed mm-hmm. that it would work.
And if you don't see a light at the end of the tunnel, or you don't see it right now, kind of like what Pastor talked about today, like the naked eye, or no, not Pastor. What's his name? Dwight, okay. That did the offering. You don't know exactly what you see on the other side of those $9 when you just gave your first mm-hmm. of that 10. So if you don't see that, it's hard to want to go to that physical therapy. But if you truly believe, like, yes, I'm gonna walk again. You keep telling yourself every day, I'm gonna get through this. I'm gonna walk again. You have the urge to go to that physical therapy, to do your exercises, to stand up for a few 5 minutes, right, to get back to where you need to go.
Absolutely.
I was going to say, just to kind of piggyback, I guess kind of like sum it all up, like faith is the actual belief, perseverance is the action attached to it. Mm-hmm. And like that's what Pastor G was saying, like it's hard to live a life where you're speaking one thing but there's no action attached to it. So mm-hmm. Faith within it, faith without works is dead, and just faith within itself, the substance of things hoped for, evidence of things not seen. So the more you persevere and walk in that faith, the more that faith is going to strengthen, which will allow your endurance and perseverance to be stronger. So it's just interchangeable, but faith is that belief in your heart, and then that perseverance is the action that follows.
Yeah. And I think we as a people tend to get into a place where we think just because we say something or someone says something to us that it's just going to happen. Like, oh, you need to go get a job, or I'm going to get a job, or I'm going to have this kid, or I'm going to be married, or I'm going to get out of this depression or whatever. But if you're not working toward that, it's never going to happen for you. You can say all day, oh, I want to go back to school and I want to start that business. But if you don't ever fill out that college application,
right,
you're not going to
that's
school.
why I think it's very important. Like, even when they talk about mental health, yeah, you can pray that God, like you said about the depression, that He pulls you out, but it's okay to also go see a therapist. You know what I mean? Like, don't just assume that just you praying alone is going to be enough to pull you out of it. That's great, but you have to do something about it also.
And I think we as Christians do a disservice for people that are going through mental health, and we discourage them from going to seeking help and saying God has all the answers. And not that God doesn't have all the answers, but God also blessed people with the knowledge and the gift to go to school, to become a therapist, and to become whatever to help us that deal with mental health.
So, like, that's another piece of the puzzle. Like, God is the source, but He provides resources. So, therapists are a resource, so it's not, and it doesn't offset the fact that God can't deliver you from it. But I hear a lot of, like, pastors say this, like, God is not going to work until we do. So He needs to see that we can be diligent in taking that step to seek out somebody who's wise in that area. Like, if we want to get fit, we got to go see a personal trainer. You feel me? Like, especially if we don't know what we're doing. We want to find somebody who's, like, skilled in that area, like we were just saying. So God will put somebody in that position or provide you with a resource to help you build that perseverance as well.
So I think y'all hit on pretty much like verses 3 and 4. So I'm gonna just reread it. But it says, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. So we know, like you said, Sydney, you have a goal, something you're trying to do, but then we all kind of like jumped in. But it's that belief that you can accomplish it that pushes you to keep going. And then verse 4 says, let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete. And I think that links to what you were talking about, Brad, about like, okay, yeah, we're going to push through, but like it's doing something and it's developing something inside of us. So that kind of answered like my second question about how does perseverance lead to maturity and completeness? And I think like you're absolutely right. I think I kind of vision it sometimes as like a muscle. So it's like if we keep doing something, then it grows stronger and it becomes easier for us. And then we can honestly like move on to something else. So like when you're working out and like you have your weight and your reps, you keep doing the same thing over and over again with the goal or the hope that you'll see gains or you'll lose weight and build muscle, whatever that is. And then like that gets easy and then you got to add more weight or move to a different type of exercise. And I think it's that same idea. But I think you're right. If we never engage in that work in the first place, like we're never going to even start on that path to progress or to growth and maturity.
Because I think for some people, leaving their comfort zone isn't something that they want to do. You know what I mean? So they'll never really know what they're capable of or what can happen because, it's on the other side of their comfort zone. So once you're willing to get outside of your comfort zone, who knows what can happen.
And I can truly testify to that because y'all know I just moved. So when I got my apartment, it was like a week after. I was like, Mom, I don't think I want to move. Like, I'm not ready. She was like, no, you're ready. She was like, what's wrong? Because like all of a sudden, like I got this sudden urge, like I can't do this. Like I'm not gonna move. I'm terrified. And then I would have never, if I never would have moved, I would have never known like I can actually cook. Like, and that might seem small, y'all, but I really didn't cook before I left home. And so like the fact that I can cook and it's edible and it's actually good and like I'm alive, like I would have never known. I would have never known that I'm capable, and not having to call my mom every 5 minutes, like, Mom, how do I do this? How do I do that? Figuring it out on my own. Yeah. I would have never known I would be able to do that if I didn't live by myself. Yeah. Or like budgeting and paying bills. Like,
That's real.
who thinks of that type of stuff? But like, like my parents taught me like how to like spend your money and stuff. But it's a whole different realm when you're adulting.
Oh yeah.
So like, just being able to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yes.
And I tell a lot of my friends that, and some of them don't listen, but you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable because you don't know what beauty can come out of that uncomfortable.
But not only that, Sydney, we live in a generation where it's enamored to be like, I got my own this, I got my own that, I can do this by myself, this, and that. But perhaps that's not what God wants for you at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, humble yourself. Maybe you need to stay at home a little bit longer, right, and get this and this and this going, mm-hmm, for yourself, and then, you know, move on to whatever's next. But, you know, because it makes people uncomfortable, or they're ashamed to say that, you know, I still live at home, or, right, you know, I haven't reached that moment yet, you know, they'll never, you know, who knows what could happen. Mm-hmm. But, you know, yeah, people are not ready. Sometimes everybody's not ready to go through that moment. Yeah.
And
uncomfortable.
I think that's true sometimes, but I think it also goes back to like faith, period. Mm-hmm. So it's like faith, you don't know what's on the other side when you're operating in faith. Like, right, like you said, like you did it. When you got in it, you're like, I don't want to be here anymore. But mm-hmm, like you kept with it, you persevered through it. Mm-hmm. And now you see like, oh, I'm growing, I'm developing, I'm budgeting, I'm living, I'm doing stuff on my own, not calling my mom. Like, but it all starts with just taking that leap of faith into something that's uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And I think that when we pull back, when we don't want to do that, whether it's like career-wise, relationship-wise, like just your personal life, your faith, your spirituality, like we miss out on so much that could be happening on the other side of that leap.
But because, you know, we want things right away. Yeah, and it's not always going to happen right away. Like Pastor G said today in church, you know, you planted that seed, but, you know, what he said about the apple, like you don't know you don't know how many apples
are in the seed.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. But like, so that made me think like, it's a work, like that's what perseverance is. Mm-hmm. Like perseverance is not instant. So like we don't know a lot of times in a lot of situations, like we have to learn how to even just persevere in the first place. But so moving on, it kind of also talks about believers. It says believers in humble circumstances ought to take pride in their high position, but the rich should take pride in their humiliation. So, like, my question is, what kind of pride are they talking about? Like, believers should take pride in high position. No, believers in humble circumstances, right, should take pride in their high position, but they're in humble circumstances, right? But then the rich should take pride in their humiliation. So it's kind of like two contrasting ideas in which pride exists. So, like, what are your thoughts about, like, elaborating or breaking that down?
So I feel like in the first scenario, it's more or less the understanding that, you know, I'm not worthy of this position God has placed me in, but He's designed me, He's created me to fulfill the purpose required of this position. So, you know, you're in humble circumstances, but you take pride in knowing like, hey, I'm truly not qualified to do this, but because I said yes to the call, God is going to continually qualify me for this. But when it comes to the other scenario, people who are already privileged or in that seat of space tend to have a different arrogance about them. Mm-hmm. And so when it does take them being humble and being humiliated to really realize that, yo, like at the end of the day, I don't have to have this, but I'm in this position, so I do need to be humble in knowing that like this doesn't always have to be. Money is a very easy transition to think. You can have money today and go broke tomorrow. And people's perception of you will change just as quick as that money does when it goes away. And so when you can have that understanding and that reality and be able to balance either scenario, that's when God can really use you and you can reach like your maximum potential.
Yeah. All right, folks. Thank you. That's it on that.
I resonate with that a lot. That's awesome. Okay, so now we know not to be prideful about where we are, but then also when we get to position to give God the glory, honor,
Right.
and respect for what
Getting
he's
into it,
deserving of.
right.
Exactly. So, like, yes. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So also another question. So in verse 13 it says, when tempted, no one should say God is tempting me. And then it goes on in verse, it goes on. It says, but each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire and enticed. So then the question is, like, who can we blame for our temptations? So, like, it's not God, but is it always necessarily us? Or, like, who? And not saying we have to blame someone for our temptation, but, like, where does that thing come from, and what's responsible for our temptations?
I will say, in one scenario, we place ourselves in positions to be tempted, especially, and I guess the easiest scenario to use is like once you make that decision to receive Christ, you know, like the old people used to say, like, things I used to do, I don't do anymore. Places I used to go, I don't go anymore. But what happens when you're in an environment where you just can't immediately escape, where you have to be around those same people, same pressures all day long? So, you know, we've made that choice to follow Christ, but we're not all the way in a position to just leave that environment. So, you know, there's going to be a constant temptation there. And so, once again, it goes back to faith and perseverance. Like, then we have to decide, like, how am I going to handle myself in this space? You know what I mean? Like, what is my responsibility now as a believer in this environment? You can either become a product of it, or you can produce in the environment you've been in.
That's very true. So I think it does come back to us. One, because that's what it says, but then also, even in that situation, like, we're still responsible no matter what in how we act when we are tempted. But I think, like, we also have to be honest and real with ourselves about who we are and how we are. So it's like, if I have a choice to be somewhere I know is going to be a temptation for me, and I still go, like, my desire enticed me to go. It pulled me into that situation. But it's like, and I think you're right, we still have to persevere even in resisting temptations, right? Because, like, I can say no. I think if I can say no, then I can maybe keep saying no, right?
Yeah.
But every time I say yes to something I shouldn't say yes to, it's going to be harder to say no the next time.
And that's why I don't think we should really focus on who's to blame for our temptations, but more us taking accountability for what we do. Because oftentimes, and I've seen this even in my personal life, I feel like I've had more temptations being saved than I did before.
Yeah, because you're convicted.
And I honestly, most of them, 99.9% of them, I created myself. It wasn't someone magically appeared and put a little hex on me and was like, oh, you're going to deal with this today. No, more than likely I stumbled upon it because I was hanging around a group of people or dealing with people or dealing with a certain situation. And I'm like, oh, I'm just going to go do this today because of the brain and the mind and how that works. But I don't think we should focus on, like, whether God is tempting us or whether the devil is tempting us or people. I think we need to focus on, okay, what am I going to do when this happens? And now that I know that this is bothering me, what am I going to do about it? Am I just going to lay dormant and just let it continue to happen? Or am I going to be active in making sure it doesn't happen again? And not to say that you have to be perfect, and don't focus on becoming perfect. Focus on you progressing into the next thing.
Okay, I can see that. And I think that's the accountability that we have to have for ourselves too. That we wish sometimes other people were holding us accountable to, but it's like, no, people are not going to hold you accountable to that stuff. You have to do it for yourself first. And, like, for me, maybe not right now, but I remember times when, like, I would want people to hold me accountable to not doing stuff, but I would be trying to want the same people who I'm around making bad decisions with to hold me accountable to do something better. Like, we are all trying to grow together, and that's not going to work.
And I tell a lot of the people that I mentor all the time, like, I can tell you and give you advice, but unless you're going to be accountable and take that on for yourself and realize that before I even tell you, then there's no point of me continuously tell you if you're never going to learn how to say, oh, Sydney, I don't need to be doing this. I don't need Stephanie to tell me. I need myself to tell me that this is what I don't need to be doing.
Because if you're always waiting for somebody else to tell you that you shouldn't, that's not going to work either. Because eventually you're going to be in a place where you're by yourself. Nobody's going to be there to do that.
And I think it also sets, you can potentially set unrealistic expectations in your relationships with people. So what I'm saying is, if I call somebody and say, hey bro, like, make sure I don't do this, this, and this, and they're like, cool, I got you. But if they don't understand the why behind it, so if I have an issue with alcoholism, if I'm telling my boy, like, hey, hold me accountable, make sure I don't drink, but they don't know, like, what is the aftermath of me drinking, then their desire and their will to hold me accountable is not there.
Yeah.
So they're going to say yes in the moment because they think they're being a good friend, but at the end of the day, that's not how accountability works. So a lot of times we're putting pressure on people who we haven't given full clarification on what we're dealing with, and then it becomes a tarnish to the relationship. So.
Absolutely. So last question. At the very end of this selection, it says in verse 18, it says, He, meaning God, chose to give us birth through the word of truth, that we might be a kind of first fruits of all He created. So, like, what does it mean to be a first fruit?
Isn't it the same as like giving your first to God? Like, putting that best foot forward, giving whatever that, whatever that is that you have to offer. That.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says, He chose to give us birth through the word of truth, that we might be a kind of first fruits of all He created. I'll say, like, my first thought is, like, we kind of talked about this today in church, or you mentioned it earlier, it's like a seed produces a fruit, right? And we all want to bear fruit, like we want to have fruit. And I'm visualizing like us as seeds, right? But it's only when we go through this process, when we persevere, when we're made mature and complete in our faith, that we actually blossom or grow into a fruit. That's what I got.
I think it also it kind of hits on when it talks about Him giving us His truth. I think that is kind of just like a reflection of the word. So that within itself is an accountability piece as well. So it's like if God gives us a designated task, He's given us the truth. He's pretty much everything we need is in the word. So we don't really have an excuse not to go out and execute what's being asked of us. So of course, our call for all Christians is to be disciples of men. So when we have opportunities, we need to be sharing Christ with people. So not only do we have the word, but we have our own experiences we can share with people. So if we're refusing to share either, then we're doing a disservice to God, because He's given us truth through the word and truth in the manifestations of our own experiences.
Totally. And I think like even what you said about the bit about truth adds to like that whole idea that God's word is the seed, right? And once that word is implanted in us, then we become the seed, and then we can then bear fruit, first fruit,
right?
And then it's like exactly, and the seed or the fruit that we're able. Okay, y'all, I love like this visualization that's going on in my head. So like we become then like we turn into this fruit, and then someone like eats us, right? Like we're spreading the word to them, but then like they're implanted with the seed, and then and it's just kind of like a ripple effect.
Right.
But like it started off with us being the first fruit.
Right.
So that's kind of dope. I like that. I would love to be a first fruit.
I look at it that way, and then I also look at it in the way that God initially designed us, and being in connection with Him, and being complete and whole with Him, and not needing someone else to like validate us, and really doing what our design purpose is supposed to be. And so I think when we're saved, our ultimate goal is to transition back into that first fruit. And once you are saved, to completely walk in that. and to completely walk in the likeness and the way of God, and not just going out and spreading the gospel, but also living that out in your life completely and whole. Because then I think that's when you like transition into being a first fruit, and then your task and your purpose after that is to go share the gospel. But you can't go share the gospel until you've lived through it yourself.
Yes, I love that. And I think it brings relevance to the fact it says we might be a kind of first fruit. So it's like, you're right, we're not the way God originally created us to be. But once we do get back to that point, we will be like a kind of first fruit, like a model of that first creation. So I think that's extremely good.
And I think also, just to kind of jump on that too, I think using that terminology, kind of first fruit, I think the kind is kind of reflective of the different calls God places on all our lives. So yeah, our holistic call is to lead people to Christ, but everybody's different spiritual gifts and calling will vary. So that will be the kind of first fruit they're supposed to be in the eyes of Christ. So I think that plays into it as well.
Yeah.
It is.
That's good.
All right, so now to just like talk and chat about how this really comes alive in our lives. First question with multiple sub questions. Okay. What trials have you persevered through? And then, like, what did it take for you to persevere? How was it difficult? And how did you grow from the situation?
I'm all about transparency.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was raped as a young girl, and then raped again at 18. And dealing with that, and like realizing, looking back, and I kind of realized it even in high school, that from the moment I was raped at 5 years old, from then on I was depressed and dealt with a whole bunch of like mental health issues, anxiety, and all of that. And when I rededicated my life back to Christ when I was in high school, I really went through a phase of really getting to a place of coping with what was going on. I will never get over what happened to me. But being able to live day to day and just not go through the motions and not fake the funk, but live a life, live a normal life. And it was hard. It was hard dealing with my emotions and really sitting down and trying to figure out who I was. Because I think I lost myself at 5 years old, and I never knew who I was until really recently. Like, I never really knew exactly who is Sydney, who is she, because her innocence was taken away at 5 and then taken again at 18. So it's like, who am I supposed to be meant to always consistently get raped and beat up all the time and just have all these scars on me? Like, what is my purpose behind this? And it took a lot of like self-reflection and like really like, okay, what is Sydney like? Does Sydney like to really eat this? Like, even like the small little things, like, do I really like eating this? Or do I just like eating it because I was told like I like this? Or is this like the style of the way that I dress or how I talk or my mannerisms? Is this really how I am? Or is this something that I came to be because I felt like I had to put a show on for people, like I'm okay, I'm fine, because I was hiding it for so long. My mom didn't know I was raped as a little girl until I was in the 10th grade. So I was faking the funk even with her, like putting on a show all the time. It also caused me to really realize, okay, Sydney, you need help, you have issues, go see someone. And really like taking what you learn when you're seeing a therapist and applying that throughout. So I write in my journal, not all the time, but in moments where I'm like, all right, it's becoming too much. It's like a weight is on me. Okay, I need to go write, like really write out how I feel. Sometimes in my journals, I'm cussing in my journals. I'm mad, I'm angry. It also took me a very long time. Part of my perseverance and part of my overcoming of what happened to me, I had to learn how to forgive and not be bitter. The ultimate end all be all of that forgiveness was just, okay, Sydney, you've done a lot of bad things in your life. You've hurt people. And if God can forgive you, then God has also forgiven your rapist. Because my sin, in the eyes of God, no sin is greater than the other. So my sin that I've done to people is equal to my rapist sin and him raping me. And when I realized that, I'm like, wow. Like there's, in God's eyes, it's all equal. Mm-hmm. Even though us as humans, we're like, we put stipulations on things, and if I cuss Brad out right now, okay, y'all may look at me like, she just on something today, but y'all witness a rape, you're like, oh, that's the devil. Mm-hmm. But in God's eyes, literally what that rapist did and what I did to Brad is exactly the same. It's no different. You just did wrong. Yeah. And I just, to get to that point was hard. I'm not even gonna lie to you, because I was like, God, there is no way that me and him could be the same. There is no way. And he was like, come back to reality.
Yeah, I think that's humility too. Mm-hmm. Like remembering that we're not better than anybody else because we sin different. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like everybody is deserving of the same forgiveness. Yeah. But like that's huge for you, and I'm so glad you were able to actually like get to this point right now. Mm-hmm. Because I think a lot of people end up getting stuck in a place of like darkness or despair or hopelessness. And stuff like that happens. Thanks for sharing. You're welcome. Thanks for your transparency and setting it off. Like,
didn't mean to get emotional. I didn't think I was gonna get emotional, because normally when I talk about it now, I'm good. But sometimes,
yeah. Anyone else? Whatever you persevered through, what did it take? How was it difficult? How'd you grow?
I guess for me, kind of like an identity thing. Growing up in a family that's like majority women, the men that were in my family, not too many of them I could actually look up to. Like the only man who really raised me was my dad and my granddad. So when I went to college, like the summer of my sophomore year, my granddad passed away, and it really took a toll on me that summer because he was like my go-to guy. When my dad was working, my dad alternates day and night shifts. Like my granddad was my go-to. He's always been like my biggest believer. Like he used to tell me like, you're gonna be a millionaire one day and all this stuff. So like my granddad was always just like pushing like everything into me and pouring into me. And so when he died, like for a minute, I was like, what am I gonna do? You know what I'm saying? Like I ain't got my granddad no more. Pops ain't always available. Like I'm literally walking into manhood now. How am I gonna be a man? And so I was upset, and I was like, I had my moment. I was like, wow, God, like you got some really trash timing. Like this couldn't happen later. You know what I'm saying? But it was in that moment where like, even though my granddad passed away, God was able to like create a new relationship with my uncle, my mom's older brother. So he's kind of like gradually taking my granddad's place. And there's so much of my granddad in him. Of course, that's his son. Mm-hmm. But like there's so much of my granddad in him. And like that same positive energy and just pouring into that I got from my granddad, my uncle's that guy now. And so like I'm super thankful to have my uncle in my life. Of course, thankful to have my dad in my life. But, my uncle used to always push me out of like being a people pleaser. He was like, a lot of the things you've done throughout your life is because everybody told you would be good at it and things like that. But he was like, you really got to start living for you and really trying to figure out like who Brad is supposed to be. And, now being 30, like, out of that 20 stage, I can just kind of see the roller coaster I went on trying to figure myself out. But I can like really confidently say that like I really know who I am now. I'm able to like share myself with people and be the true version of who I'm supposed to be, which is like super rare these days. And I really I set a standard for myself, so I don't really like stand for a lot. If it ain't right, I'm gonna tell somebody it ain't right. If I need to speak some truth, you're gonna hear it. Sometimes I don't always, present it in the best way. Sometimes my tone is a little off, which I'm still working on, but like I'm just a big advocate for like realness and truth, man, because we need it in the world and the generation we're living in now. And so, it's kind of one of the things I always say, like in a world full of fabrications, like I'm thankful to God for like the realness that's around me and the real people who are in my life. So like just getting out of that people pleaser stage and just like having those resources like my uncle who came in at a time when I lost my granddad to really step up and help me out. It meant a lot to me and it's definitely grown me into a better man. So that was one of my bigger moments in life.
That's dope. I think both of y'all kind of then like in what you persevered through. On the other side, you came out with a stronger understanding of who you are and your place in this world, which is awesome. Did you want to share?
Yeah. So for me, it was just moving back to North Carolina. I lived in Orlando for 4 years. I took care of my grandfather until he died, and I was content being in Florida. I had a job, I had a house. I didn't want for anything, but I wasn't growing. I wasn't thriving. I was just kind of there. I traveled a lot, went anywhere I wanted to go, but I still wasn't like doing anything. I was just kind of like to Facebook or to Instagram. Everybody felt like I was just living like this bomb life. My life wasn't bad, but like I said, like I wasn't growing. I was just kind of going through the motions. So I always prayed. I kept praying that God would put me in a place to make me sit still so that I could really figure out what I was supposed to be doing. And I ended up back in Rocky Mount. Not knowing that that was my prayer being answered, because that was my prayer. I kept praying like, I just need to sit still. I need to sit still because I didn't know how to sit still. And I think now that me moving around constantly was just my way of coping with not being happy with what was going on around me. But I didn't realize that that was how I was kind of coping with everything. It was easier for me to just kind of always be on the move than to like really sit down and answer why did I feel this way. So then I ended up back home, and initially I was like, oh, like, back in Rocky Mount, here we are, like, how did I get back here, but I got a job. I was the behavior specialist for National Rocky Mount School Systems, and then I got promoted, and I was in the classroom. But even aside from that, my hair business started growing, and I was able to do way more than I could in Florida because I do one person's hair, and then somebody else sees it, and then somebody else sees it, and then I have like this network of people. I do so many different people's hair from all different walks of life, and I just love being able to sit down and have those couple hours to communicate with them. And now, I have this network of people around me. If I need something, anything, it's nothing for me to pick up my phone and have access to like, hey, do you know somebody that can XYZ? Or, oh, I saw that you do this. What about now? I can network things that I wasn't able to do, in Florida, but it took me to kind of be okay with being back home outside of my comfort zone, outside of what was familiar. This was familiar, but I had kind of been removed from this area for so long. Like, I didn't really know a whole lot of people to come back to. Brad, he always came to Florida, and that was kind of like my go-to person. So it really just branched from there. But I'm comfortable now. Like, I don't even, being in Rocky Mount is not a deterrent for me. Like, I don't feel like my world has come to an end, but I'm happy that I'm here. I met you guys. Everything just kind of came full circle when in the beginning I was completely this was not where I wanted to be, but I understand now that sometimes and that's what I was saying earlier. I was speaking to having to leave your comfort zone. Everything you want is on the other side of fear. As long as you're willing to break out of that little box, you don't know what can happen. And I'm doing well. I feel better.
What's up?
For me, I'm like still trying to decide what I'm really going to talk about right now. I think like one thing I can share, because like not to be on too much similar topics, is like financial perseverance. So I think like my parents raised me like I never wanted for anything, and like they were great providers, so I never needed anything, and they taught me like I was raised tithing, like even if it was just $1 like at church every Sunday. So like all those things were there, and they taught me. I guess they taught me or they modeled for me how to manage money well. Mm-hmm. They did a great job of all of that. But then when I kind of like got on my own, I just wanted to go. So like I love to do a lot, and if I could do more, I would be doing more and going different places and things. So like I remember I had an internship in college, and like it was completely paid for. They paid for like where we live. We had like a per diem every day for food allowances, and then we still got a stipend for the research we were doing. So I was like rolling in the dough for like a whole summer. And that was kind of like the start of a decline, because when I came back from that summer and my finances weren't situated like that, but I was still spending and doing like they were, like that was extremely problematic. And my mom, I will never forget this. She was like, I'm going to cut you off. I'm not giving you any more money because you don't know how to manage your money. And I was like, fine, do it, whatever. I got a job anyway. So I started substitute teaching. Now, she never cut me off. But like, I can understand where that frustration was coming from, because she's like, what in the world are you doing? Like, exactly. Like, you have everything you need to be successful, and you're spending it on stuff you don't need to spend it on. So like, that was in college. So then, but even now, it was a whole lot happened one December. I don't remember the year, but it was like a whole lot. And I had credit cards. I had always like spent my credit cards, but then like paid them right back off, like just to build credit. But like this December, it was a lot going on, and I think I was trying to do too much, and it was Christmas and gifts and everything, and it had to be like a couple $100 I put on my credit card, and I kept paying it off the next month, but it just kept increasing, because every time I would pay it off, then I would need to use it again because I spent money to pay it off. So then it was kind of like the cycle of like just going. And then like you have people looking at you like you have money, so then you feel the pressure to live like you have money. And it's like, but people don't really know that, like, first of all, most of the stuff I have is because of my parents. But then like, if I did a better job managing my money, maybe I could really be living like this, but I'm not. So like my parents, they still helped me. So like they gave me a good chunk of change to pay off like my credit card, and then like I still have some stuff like furniture to pay off, like my house, my car. So like even those big purchases, I still put in there as like stuff to be paid off, because my mindset has kind of shifted. So now it's like this is bigger than me. I'm not just living for the moment. I'm not just living to have fun and to do what I see everybody around me doing. I'm living for a purpose. So my money has to live for a purpose too. So I can't just be throwing it away because it's a gift from God. And that's a lesson that God had to teach me through that time too. Like, I'm giving you this stuff. Like, you have a job, you have a second job. Like, you're in a position where you don't have to be struggling. But because you're not being a good steward of what I'm giving you, you're feeling the pressure. So like I had to learn that, like, okay, I need to be a good steward of God's money. Like, this is His money. I'm just holding it right now. So before I make decisions, before I make purchases, I need to ask Him, like, is this something you want me to do? Do I really need this? Do I really need to go here or not? And like He's still teaching me that lesson, because like I was about to buy a car last week, and it's bad. But like I went in there and I saw it was new, it was shiny, it had all these features. And in my head, I'm like, I know I don't need to. I called my mom after. I was like, yeah, I bought a car. She was like, how are you going to afford 2 cars on your insurance? She was going off. I was like, Mom, I'm kidding. Like, I didn't really do it. So, like, every time I say no to something like that, I feel really good, because I'm exercising this power of being a good steward over what God's given me in a time, because it was not always like that. So I'm appreciating the lessons I've learned throughout the way, but, like, I still have room to grow in that situation. I don't think we have time for another one, but we can maybe squeeze it in if we limit our responses to like quick and short. So
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean like just like these
Let's try.
these questions aren't as like deep.
Oh, okay.
Like you could answer them short.
Cool.
So you can choose from two. One, what's something you've asked for in doubt? So you asked for but you didn't really think it was gonna happen. Or two, choose one question. What temptations have you experienced? And like whatever. What temptations have you been faced with? I guess. So pick which one. And then so what have you asked for in doubt? Or what temptations have you experienced in life?
We can answer either or.
Mhm.
Okay. So I asked for a job in doubt because I did not think I was gonna get one. At first, I was like, okay, maybe I'm just supposed to stay in Rocky Mount and just do ministry full time. And like I knew I was always eventually gonna do ministry full time. Just didn't think it was gonna be like that quick. So I'm like, all right, God, well, you got me in this place, this position. This is what I'm doing. And my mom was like, what? And my mom could not see like my thought process in it. She just thought, okay, I just got you through school. You got all this student loan debt. You just got your degree, and now you're just about to go preach the word of God to people. And she's like, that's fine, but you got work. You got bills to pay. And I'm like, I know, Mom, but I think this is where God got me right now. She was like, yeah, no, you got to talk to God again because I don't know what's going on. And really, honestly, y'all, like I really thought like this was honestly gonna be what I was gonna do for like a good while. And so at one point I was like, all right, she frustrated me. I got to go. My mom was getting on my nerves, so I'm like, God, just give me a job, please. And before that, I really hadn't been like praying about it. Like I've been praying like, okay, God, make a way for something, but I really wasn't like specific. But even when I prayed for it, I was like, I really didn't think he was gonna do it. And then when he did it, I was just like, well, now I'm on my own. Quickly how things change.
Yeah.
In a matter of like a month. So
I think that's a perfect example of like God knowing what we need. Because honestly, correct me if I'm wrong, but like doing ministry full time, that was a safe option for you? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I was very comfortable doing that.
Okay.
And honestly, I still kind of am doing ministry full time.
Yeah.
Because ministry is like a full time job. But I'm also like literally ministry is like my life. I mean, I'm a youth investor. I have my own personal stuff that I do. So it's like, and I'm also working. So I'm doing both.
Yeah.
But I just really thought I was not going to be working in my field. Like, okay, God, thank you. Like, I'm ready. And he was like, no, you're going to be working too. Which I'm also fine with.
Yeah. I think that's a great picture of God's mercy too. Like, even though you didn't necessarily think it was going to happen, God's still like, I got you, sis. Okay. Yeah.
I was like, don't doubt God. I was like, good looking at you. He hold it down.
Doubt or temptation. Be shorter than Sydney.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Talk about.
One of my biggest weaknesses is just like immersing myself in everybody else's issues. And so like I'm usually the go-to person in my friendship circle. A lot of people come to me with their problems, whether they want feedback from it or just for me to listen. So there are times where I have friends who still reach out to me and call me about certain things. And so I really had to train myself like, unless they tell you they want feedback, do not give them feedback. Just listen, because I'm so used to being like, all right, bro, you need to do this. All right, sis, you need to do that. And like every time one of my friends call me and they like addressing the issue, I'm like, I gotta like talk to myself and be like, all right, Brad, don't you say nothing unless they ask you to. Like, so like it's still a process for me because like I just got a heart for people. I don't like seeing my people struggle. I don't like seeing my people going through, but I understand that one thing Pastor G said really resonated with me. He was like, if we take it upon ourselves to try to ask God to pull people out of situations, it kind of like deletes the level of blessing they could have potentially got if they would have went through their struggle.
Yeah.
And so I try to be mindful of like when I'm interceding for somebody, I'm very mindful of what I pray. So instead of saying, God, remove this situation from them, more like now it's more along the lines of like, give them strength while they go through this, or continue to provide resources for them while they go through this, because I don't know what that blessing is for them, and it could be life changing. But if I'm praying, oh God, just get them out.
Yeah, they
You
never
know what I
developed
mean?
that perseverance to become
Yeah.
complete and mature.
So you know,
Yeah.
I think that's been my biggest challenge, and even now, like I said, this is a process. But you know, life itself is a process of progression. So you know, I've gotten a lot better, and so you know, it's got to a point where not as many people hit me up as much. So they're figuring things out too, which is a good thing. That saves me some sleep at night, stuff like that too. But that's my thing right now. So.
Awesome. I think like for me, temptation wise, it would be like, I think even like when it comes to my thinking and my thoughts, I'm very tempted to think in a certain way. Like I think very futuristically, and this is top of mind because this is like kind of what I'm currently going through. So trying to think more in the present is not where my mind goes at first. So like I'm so tempted to like see something, want something, and then like try to get something, right? So like see a car, want a car, work out my budget so I can afford a car type thing. But like no, the car I have right now is perfectly fine. I don't need another one. Like, and that's that temptation to want to go and advance is keeping me from appreciating my current life where it is. And that's something that God has kind of really shown me like in this past week, because I need to appreciate what I have right now if I'm ever going to appreciate anything else, because I can't keep looking for what's next in order to like keep my hope alive per se. I need to like just have hope and faith that God just got everything in control and be okay with where I am. So like that temptation for my mind to go somewhere else is so real, and like I have to realize when I'm doing it, and that's something that I'm just starting to do. So like even on the ride to church this morning, I was literally like in my car driving past stuff like, oh God, thank you for this, like because I have to retrain and reprogram my mind to be okay with where I am right now. And that temptation is real, especially when I see something that I want and I'm like
shiny.
Right, basically. And I'm like, nope, that's future stuff. I need to be okay with what I have right now. But yeah. And that was all. I think like everything that we kind of talked about was directly linked to that idea of like faith moving us to do, but like us being consistent in that work or persevering through that in order to reach like God's desired goal for us. And that's going to be so different for all of us so much of the time. But like I've been blessed by all of y'all's stories, and then seeing how God's word manifests itself in our lives so differently, but it's literally the same message is like really cool. But I think like for everyone else, I would say for me, but like this is hopefully advice that others could use. Like once you start, it's easier to continue. I think the hardest part is just starting, jumping out, being like resolute in your mind that hey, I'm either doing this thing, I'm committed to coming to church, I'm committed to reading my word, I'm committed to praying, or not doing these things. Like I'm committed to not having sex, I'm committed to not partying. Like we have to be committed to persevere in something that's going to produce a work in us. But I think like starting is that first huge hurdle. Yeah. Yeah. So in closing, I guess, could we pray now? Okay. I thought you were about to pray. Oh, Lord, thank you so much for allowing us all to come together, God. We pray that anybody watching and us as participants truly benefit from your word and just the lessons that you have taught us during this time, God. Help us to continue to live this out, God. Help us all to persevere. Help us to see the growth that's happening along the way and to have hope and to be faithful that you are doing something good with us and that you have the best desired outcomes for our lives. God, help us to see that, help us to know that, and allow that knowledge, that belief, and that faith to push us to do more and to live lives worthy of the calling that you have placed over us. God, help us to persevere, put people around us that will support and encourage us in that pursuit of holiness and righteousness, God, and protect us from temptation, God, protect us from doubt, and just keep us resolute in you, keep us firm, keep us grounded in your word, Lord, and be with us, go before us, and be our defender behind us as we continue on this journey of life. In Jesus' name, we thank you so much. We praise you. Let me say amen.
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 Hey y'all, it's your girl Whitney. So thank you for joining our Bible Talk. The series is coming out of the book of James and it's called Faith Flow. So make sure that you guys subscribe below, follow us on social media, and we'll see you next time.